Assalamualaikum and hi to Madam Fariha and my fellow classmates. Today, I'm Shaza binti Sanusi and my group mates Nur Khairunisa, Nur Anis Afika, Amalia Nazifa, Atira and Anisa from Group 4 will presenting on the question 4 past year question. Directors of Indah Berhad comprise of 10 members which include many big names in Malaysian corporate sector. 7 of directors are independent directors. This follow compliance with the requirement by Bursa Malaysia listing requirements. The company has tremendous achievement and has been able to declare high dividend to their shareholders. However, in January 2019, Indah Berhad announced that its earnings may be cut by up to RM964 million due to losses in its energy and utilities division from cost overruns in 4 projects. Following the announcement, its share price plumped to RM7.47 on 28 May 2019, a 10-month low. Due to the loss suffered by Indah Berhad, the board then asked the CEO to take a leave. 2 weeks before the scheduled announcement of its second quarter results, Indah Berhad then called a press conference to announce the losses and the CEO's leave of absence. Based on the situation given, explain any 3 factors which possibly lead to the failure to protect the interests of the company.
The first factor which possibly lead to protect the interests of the company is due to lack of skill, knowledge and ability of the independent director in the business operation. As we already know, the board of directors should comprise of both independent and executive director to ensure the check and balance of the company's decision. Independent director is the one who is free from the management and any relationship with the members of the company. Meanwhile, the executive directors is those who are involved in managing the company's daily operation, like the management of the company. According to paragraph 15.02 of Bursa Malaysia Listing Requirement (BMLR), a listed issuer must have a minimum of 2 directors or 1/3 of the board of directors of a listed issuer, whichever is the higher or independent director. It means that the majority of the board of directors must be the independent director. Practice 5.2 of Malaysian Code on Corporate Governance (MCCG) 2021 also mention about the independent directors, whereby at least half of the board should be the independent director. By referring to the question, Indah Berhad has complied with the requirement of Bursa Malaysia listing requirement since its board of directors consists of majority of the independent director with 7/10 directors are independent. Therefore, it can contribute towards the independent view to each of the board decision. However, by having majority of independent director in the board also can lead to the failure to protect the company's interest since they are not able to advise the CEO in terms of every decision they make in management, since they are only act as a watchdog to the decision. In other words, they have no sufficient understanding on the business activities since they are not involved directly in the business operation. The independent director can never be as knowledgeable as the executive directors in terms of the company's business. Thus, to fulfill the interests of the company, the independent director should have a satisfactory level of knowledge about the company. It can be done by having an effective communication with those who involved directly in the decision-making process, such as CEO. With this effective communication, they can have a better understanding about the company's operation.
So, the second factor that probably lead to the failure to protect the interests of the company would be the agency problem that occurs between the owners and the directors of the company. So, to get into this matter, the agency problem will always occur in a company between the principal and the agent. In this case of Indah Berhad, the principal would be the owners or shareholders of the company, and the agents would be the directors who would be working on the interests of the principals for them. So, based on the practice 4.1 of Malaysian Code on Corporate Governance, the board and the management is supposedly to take responsibility for the company's governance or sustainability, including setting the company's sustainability strategies, priorities, and targets. However, directors and shareholders have different controls, and the principals could not have much control of the operation as much as the management do. So, this is when the agency problem will occur, which is when the agent does not fully represent the interests of the principal, which is the owner of the company. So, this is how the agency problem occurs in the Berhad. Usually, agency problem will occur because of the agents not able or not wanting to do the interest of the principal, or the principal not having the control over the agents. So the board has a task to ensure the company's sustainability strategies, priorities, and targets, as well as performance against these targets, are communicated to its internal and external stakeholders based on the Practice 4.2 of MCCG. So it means that as the board, they have a role to communicate the performance of the company to the shareholders so that the shareholders have some monitoring over the control of the directors. This all happens in order to avoid both of the parties to have conflict of interest. So, going to the case of Indah Berhad, and based on the guidance G4.2 of MCCG, they led the monitoring of the board's activity and the company's performance, as well as the financial process that takes place, especially in the energy and utilities division. So, in the case of Indah Berhad, the owners failed to be informed of the management as a whole, and this made them exposed to the high risk of being dependent wholly to the management and the directors. And so they also failed to detect that the directors did not oversee all the management and financial process that took place in the energy and utility division, which caused the share price to plunge into RM7.47. The decision made by the management will affect the company of the whole and thus jeopardize the interests of the principal, which is the owners. This is also one of the things that the directors could not totally comprehend, because the decision of the management will also affect the decision of the company as a whole and thus affect the interests of the principal. So they should know that anything that that involve the financial is really important, and they need to know that the equity of the company is not put at risk during the business process.
Assalamualaikum and hi. Next, I will explain the third factor which can possibly lead to the failure to protect the interests of the company is board limited capacity to understand the business situation and risk blindness. This factor can be related with transaction cost theory as it involves how the board governs the framework that based on the effect of internal and external transaction rather than as a contractual relationship outside the firm. Basically, the transaction cost theory is part of corporate governance and agency theory. There are few types of costs that incur in order to ensure the business can run smoothly. Under Practice 1.1 of Malaysia Code on Corporate Governance Board, MCCG Principle A, mentioned about the board should set the company's strategic aim, ensure the necessary resources are in place for the company to meet its objective, and review management performance. The board should possess the capacity or ability to determine the budget needed and understand the position of the business which will involve the transaction, not only inside of the company but also the outside, deals with the people. The failure for the board to reach the ability to forecast the cost will lead to the more cost needed to cover the insufficient and problem arise. The board should be able to understand the risk and possible threat that might occur internally and externally. As referring to Indah Berhad case, the board failed to forecast and allocate the appropriate amount during budgeting that caused the budget to go beyond expected, as the company need to cut their earning up to 964 million ringgit due to losses suffered which affect the dividend of the shareholder that will make them feel dissatisfaction. These show that Indah Berhad are not following the best practice stipulated by the MCCG, which they should set the strategic plan and allocate the resources properly. The board should have the capability in preventing the losses that from occur, as they have the experience in the business field. Plus, they were handling 4 projects, hence the decision-making process must be done precisely, and all the costs that are required in the transaction should be acknowledged by the rest of the board. In addition, the share price dropped following to the issue. This showed that the board failed to encounter the risk and did not make proper decision while handling the company that led a decrease in share price and lost interest from the shareholder. Indah Berhad faced failure in sustaining the corporate governance and the interest of the people in the company.
The next question. Identify any 2 critical attributes of an effective board. To what extent does the Indah Berhad board possess such attributes?
Assalamualaikum everyone, my name is Nur Khairunisa binti Rosli and I'm going to proceed with the second question. One of the critical attributes of an effective board is the ability of the board to be transparently engaged with the stakeholders. According to Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance (MCCG) as at 28 April 2021, Principle C of this code states regarding the integrity in corporate reporting and meaningful relationship with the stakeholders. It is believed to be best practices by the companies to often be engaged and communicate with the stakeholders to build confidence and trust between both parties. This is to ensure that the stakeholders will have better understandings on the company's goals and the level of quality of the company's management. According to Practice 12.1 of MCCG, effective, transparent, and orderly communication with the stakeholders must be ensured by the board. This can be interpreted as the company must within their best capability to have see-through management system and information of the company's practice to the stakeholders. This is to ensure that all directors of the boards, at most the CEO, shall be accessible by the stakeholders in order for them to communicate and voice out their concerns. Practice 12.2 further stated that the integrated reporting based on internationally recognized framework shall be adopted by large companies. According to guidance G12.2 of MCCG, the integrated report shall contain all information flows of the company. The report shall have all necessary details of the companies as it acts as a form of communication between the company and its stakeholders. Through a good integrated report, stakeholders may understand, hence improving the understanding of the company's flows. Eventually, it will help the stakeholders to make decisions and the company to understand the stakeholders' interests. Moreover, under guidance G12.1, communication with the stakeholders is compulsory and a favorable process for the companies, as it helps to acknowledge stakeholders' interests and put it in consideration when making decisions. To put it simply, having a transparent and regular reporting to the stakeholders will help to facilitate mutual understandings of the stakeholders and company's goals and concerns, as stated by Screen in 2021. By referring to the question, Indah Berhad has failed to comply with the best practice of MCCG, which is Principle C, which to have the CEO to transparently engage with the stakeholders. This is due to the fact that he was asked to take a leave before the press conference was made. Therefore, with the absence of the CEO, the stakeholders were unable to contact or be in touch with the CEO for them to voice out their concerns and opinions. Thus, the term transparent itself is not being fulfilled by the company. The communication is for the purpose of having the stakeholders' interests to be protected and represented by the CEO, since it is the CEO's responsibility to represent the stakeholders. Moreover, without the presence of CEO during the press conference, it will be hard for the stakeholders to find and collect information regarding the plunge of the shares. Thus, it can be said that Indah Berhad fails to comply with this best practice as stated in the MCCG.
The second one is degree of independence of the board. Under MCCG, Principle A mentioned that composition influences the ability of the board to fulfill its oversight responsibilities. To ensure the effectiveness of the board, they should include the people who have skills, knowledge, experience, and independent element that fulfill the company's objective and strategic goals. They are known as groupthink in the decision-making process. The higher number of the independent director can ensure the effectiveness and efficiency in the organization. Under Guidance 5.3 of MCCG, in considering independence, it is necessary to focus not only on the director's background and the current activities of the director that qualify him or her as independent, but also whether the director can act independently of the management. The stakeholder concerned on the potential negative impact on that director's long tenure. This is because it may erode the board's objectivity due to the familiarity in the other organization. Due to this guide, large companies are not encouraged to retain an independent director for a period of more than 9 years. This is to make sure the board can make an independent decision and judgment of the company. Under paragraph 15.02, subsection 1 of BMLR mentioned that a listed issuer must make sure that at least 2 directors or 1/3 of board of directors are independent directors. The high number of the independent directors can ensure the higher level of corporate governance practices in the organization to non-interference of judgment and ability to act in the best interest of shareholders. Based on the case of Indah Berhad, the board of directors in this company comprises of 10 members, which include big names in the Malaysian corporate sector. 7 of them are independent directors. The independent of board director can act the best of the shareholder, and they also can oversee the behavior of the management in performing their duties. This situation can avoid the companies from having issue of misconduct like fraud in the financial statement and making decisions based on their own self-interest. The misconduct can reduce the trust of the investor in the company. So, the independent of board director can ensure the effectiveness of the management in conducting the company's business activities and protect the shareholder.
In conclusion, lack of skills, knowledge, and ability of the independent director in the business operation affected can possibly lead to the failure to protect the interests of the company. Other than that, agency problem between the owners and the director of the company and board limited capacity to understand the business situation and risk blindness also factors that can possibly lead to the failure to protect the interests of the company. Furthermore, ability of the board to be transparently engaged with their stakeholder is one of the critical attributes of an effective board. Such attributes are to build confidence and trust between both parties, which is between companies and the stakeholders. Apart from that, degree of independence of the board also one of the critical attributes of an effective board to ensure the effectiveness of the board, as they should include the right group of people who have the skills, knowledge, experience, and independent elements that fit the company's objective and strategic goals.